It started as the most ordinary drive in the world. A weeknight after work, the long way home across the edge of the city, wide roads, a stretch of highway, the part of the evening where you stop thinking and just steer. I'd done it 1,000 times. Nothing about it felt wrong. Nothing felt wrong until it was standing on my step. I'd stop for a few things on the way, a shop, a full car park, the usual. Got back in, pulled out, got onto the highway, and maybe a minute up the ramp I heard a sound. A flat, heavy thunk on the body of the car, up high near the roof. The kind of knock you get when a truck ahead of you kicks a stone up off the road. I flinched, checked the mirror, saw nothing behind me, and I let it go. A rock. Of course it was a rock. I drove the rest of the way home and didn't think about it once more. Off the highway, through my neighborhood, the quiet residential streets where I knew every turn, into my own driveway. House dark, the way I'd left it, nobody home but me. I went in, turned on the lights, started making dinner. An ordinary evening in an ordinary house where I felt as safe as a person ever feels. It was about 11:30 when the knock came. Not the doorbell. A knock, firm, even, 3 on the door. And my whole body went still, because nobody knocks at 11:30. I went to the front window, off to the side, and I looked. There was a couple on my step. A man and a woman, standing close together under the porch light, dressed normal, looking up at the door, waiting like people who fully expected it to open. And past them, at the curb, there were cars. Not parked the way neighbors park. 2 of them pulled up loose along the street in front of my house, engines running. I could see the exhaust in the cold, and dark shapes inside that didn't get out. Just the couple came to the door. The cars stayed where they were, idling, full, pointed the right way to leave fast. Back up, waiting to see if the door opened. I did not open it. I stood to the side of the door, close, and I said through it, loud, steady, "Who is it?" And the man answered, friendly, a little apologetic, "Hey, so sorry to bother you this late. This is gonna sound crazy. I think you've got our phone. We dropped it earlier and we've been tracking it, and it says it's right here, at your place. Can you just check your car for us? Or could you let us in a sec to grab it?" And for one beat, it almost worked. Because it was such a small, reasonable thing. A lost phone. A tracker that led them here. People lose phones. I actually started to say, "Hang on, let me check the porch." And then the whole shape of it dropped into place at once. Cold, like stepping off a curb you didn't see. He said it was tracking to my house. I had never given these people my address. So how did a lost phone know exactly which door to send them to? A phone doesn't track itself to a stranger's house, unless somebody put it there. And the second I thought it, the thunk, the flat, heavy knock on the roof of my car, an hour ago, a minute up the highway ramp. Not a rock, a phone. A phone with a magnet on it, thrown up onto the metal of my car in that full car park or at that light, sticking, riding home with me, telling these 2 exactly where I'd stop. "I don't have your phone," I said. "I'm calling the police now." And I said it moving away from the door, toward the kitchen, my own phone already in my hand. And the friendliness on the other side didn't argue. It just stopped. "No, please, it's really important. No, come on, it's right there." None of that, the way a person who genuinely lost a phone would push. He went quiet, and then I heard him say, low, not to me, to the cars. I went back to the window, off to the side, phone to my ear, ringing. And the couple was already off the step, walking, not running, unhurried even, back toward the curb. And the 2 cars were already rolling, doors opening to take them in without fully stopping. the whole thing folding up and moving off down my street as smoothly as it had arrived. No anger, no second try. They'd come to see if the door would open, and the door hadn't, and that was simply the end of that part. I gave the dispatcher everything. The couple, the 2 cars, the direction they went, the phone, the magnet, the thunk on the highway. And I could hear myself how it sounded. A lost phone, a couple at the door. No one had touched me. No one had broken anything. But she didn't brush it off. A patrol car came through maybe an hour later and swept the street with a spotlight. Empty by then, of course. They were long gone. Nothing left out there to find. So the word was, stay inside, keep the doors locked, don't go near the car until it's light and someone can look at it. I did not sleep. I sat in the dark of my own front room, lights off so I could see the street, and I watched the curb where the cars had been. They had followed me home thinking I was alone, off the highway, through my own neighborhood, into my own driveway, watching me arrive at the one place I'd feel safest. And then they'd waited until late and brought friends and knocked. When it got light, and only when it got light, I went out to the car. And I didn't have to search. It was right where the sound had been, up on the roof near the back edge. A cheap phone in a slim case with a flat magnetic mount on the back. The kind you'd clip to a dashboard, snapped onto the metal of my car, and still there, still on. A little black thing the size of my hand that had ridden home in the dark above my head. The police took it, no name on it, no way to know who, nothing to chase. I check my car now, every busy lot, every full car park, the wheel arches, the bumpers, the roof, running my hand around the metal in daylight, in front of people. Because there was no following car in my mirror that night, no one tailgating me home. I checked. I'm a person who checks. And I was being followed the entire way by the thing I'd waved off as a rock, riding above my head, that had driven me home. My boyfriend and I were walking back to his building late, on foot, just the 2 of us, after a night out downtown. His place had a parking garage under it, a residence garage, a big rolling steel door you needed a fob to open, the kind that grinds up slow and comes back down slow. We didn't have the car that night, but the garage had the pedestrian way in, so that's how we were going up. A locked door under a building. About as safe a way home as a city gives you. We'd noticed the man a couple of blocks back, hood up, dark clothes, hands in his pockets on the far side of the street, more or less keeping our pace. You see people walking at night, that's not a thing by itself. But he was matching us. When we slowed at a light, he slowed. When we crossed, he drifted across too, a little behind. We didn't run, we just got quieter and walked a bit faster and told each other the way you do, that he was probably just going the same way. By the time we reached the garage, he'd closed the gap to maybe half a block. Still across the street, still not looking right at us. And my boyfriend got his fob out early, in his hand, ready, because we both wanted to be through that door and have it shut before the man got any closer. He hit the fob. The steel door started to grind up, slow, that heavy mechanical climb, and we ducked under it the second it was high enough and stepped into the garage. And the door, of course, started to come back down. That's how those doors work. Up to let you in, then straight back down on a timer, no waiting. We were inside, in the concrete in the parked cars in the bad orange light, and behind us the big steel door was already rolling down toward the floor, closing the street off, closing him off, and for about 2 seconds I felt relieved. Because I looked back at the door as it came down. I don't know why, to watch the gap close, to see the street disappear, to be sure. And in the gap, low, getting lower, was him. He had crossed the street. He was at the door, and he was going down, not stopping, not waiting, dropping to the ground as the steel came down, getting under it, coming in the way we'd just come in. In the last few inches, it was still open. I want to be honest about the next second, because there was no brave decision in it. I just grabbed my boyfriend's arm, and I heard my own voice come out wrong and high. "He's coming in. He came under the door. Go, go." And we went. We did not check. We did not call out to the man. We did not do any of the things you tell yourself you'd do. We turned and we ran for the inside door, the one that goes from the garage into the building's stairwell. And behind us, I heard him come up off the concrete and start after us. The stairwell door took a fob too. And that little wait, my boyfriend's hand jamming the fob at the reader, the half second the light took to go green, is the longest piece of time I have ever lived through. His footsteps were crossing the garage behind us, fast, not a stagger, not a shout, quiet even, just shoes slapping concrete, coming, the sound of someone who wasn't going to say anything, who was just going to arrive. The light went green, we shoved through. And then it was 3 flights of stairs. Concrete, switchback, 1 cage bulb, a landing, our own breathing huge in the shaft. We went up them 2 at a time, hauling on the rail, and below us the stairwell door banged open again. He'd caught it, or it hadn't latched, and his footsteps came onto the stairs behind us, climbing. I could hear them change, the flat slap of the garage turning into the harder ring of the steps, following us up, 1 flight back, then less than 1. I have never moved like that in my life. We didn't talk. There was nothing to say that was faster than running. My boyfriend hit the 3rd floor landing, a half step ahead, and slammed through the corridor door, holding it just long enough for me to come through after him. And we ran down his hallway, his door, 3rd one down, the keys already out of his pocket and shaking in his hand. Behind us, the corridor door thumped. He was on our floor. And this is the part I still dream about. My boyfriend got the key to the lock. First try, and I will thank whatever's out there for that for the rest of my life, that it went in first try. Turned it, shoved the door open, pulled me in by the wrist, and turned and threw his whole weight back against it to get it shut. And in the gap of the closing door down the hall, I saw him, stopped, maybe 20 feet off, hood up, just standing, watching the door close. The way you watch a thing you were a half second too slow for. The door shut. The deadbolt went over. That heavy, final clunk. And we stood there on the inside of it, both of us, hands flat on the wood, chests heaving, listening. And what I kept seeing behind my eyes was that steel garage door coming down. How slow it was. How long the gap at the bottom stayed open while it ground its way to the floor. A few seconds. That's all he'd needed. The seconds a heavy door spends still becoming a wall. We waited for the knock, the handle turning, his weight on the door. And it didn't come. My boyfriend looked through the peephole and his shoulders dropped and he said, "He's gone." And I made him look again, and a 3rd time, and the hall was empty each time. But empty just meant gone from that hall. He was somewhere in the building, the stairwell we'd run up, the garage, the other floors, and we had no idea where, or whether he'd really left, or whether he was just down the stairs, waiting for the door to open again. He was never found. No camera the building bothered to check, no name, no real description past a hood and dark clothes in a frame. He came in off the street behind 2 strangers, ran them to their door, missed by a second, and was gone. Why he picked us, what the plan was if that key had stuck for 1 more turn, I will never know. It just stopped the way these things stop, with a locked door in a quiet hall, and no answer to any of it. I don't trust a closing door anymore. You think of them as one way. They let you in, they shut the world out. You're on the right side of it. We did everything right. We had the fobs out. We went straight in. We didn't dawdle. I live higher up now, somewhere without a garage, and I still don't take my eyes off a door until I've heard it lock. He came home with us, and the only thing that kept him out of the apartment was a key that went in first try. It was a little after 3 in the morning when I got home, which I know is the hour you're already braced for. I'd been traveling, a late flight, the long, quiet ride back across a sleeping city to the building where I lived alone. I was tired in that hollowed-out way where you're not really watching anything. I just wanted to be inside, behind my own door, in my own bed. I was maybe 90 seconds from all of it when I felt him on the street behind me. I'd gotten out a few doors down, and I was walking the last stretch to my building. Empty street, that dead 3 a.m. stillness, my own footsteps, and then, not quite an echo, a second set behind me, off the rhythm of mine. I didn't turn right away. I did the thing you do, sped up a little, listened, and the footsteps sped up too, closer, matching. And when I finally did glance back, there was a man, half a block, walking the same line I was, straight at the building I was walking to. My building had a secured entrance, a solid shared door onto the street, glass and steel, with a keypad. You punch your code and the lock releases, and you've got a few seconds to pull it open and go through before it locks again behind you. That door was the whole promise of the place. Past it was the lobby, the elevators, the stairs, the mailboxes. The inside, residents only, the street left out on the street. I had never once thought about how that door actually worked. You punch the code, you go in, it shuts. It had always just meant home. I got to the door with him maybe 30 feet back and closing. And I did the math everyone does. Keep walking past and stay in the open, or get inside the locked door fast. And every instinct said inside, get behind the lock. So I went to the keypad and I punched my code, and my hands weren't steady, and that little delay felt enormous. The lock buzzing free, me hauling the heavy door open, stepping through into the warm, quiet light of the lobby, and turning to let it shut between me and the street. And it didn't shut because his hand was on it. He had closed the last 30 feet while I was punching the code, fast and silent, and his hand came onto the edge of the heavy door before it could swing to, and he pulled it the rest of the way open and stepped through into the lobby right behind me, through the secured door, on my code. In the few seconds it takes a lock to decide it's locked again. He didn't grab me. He didn't say anything. He just came through the door I'd opened and stood there, inside, in my building's lobby, looking at me. And that was so much worse than a grab, because a grab is a thing that's happening, and this was a thing that was deciding. I did the only thing my body had left. I ran. Not for the elevator. Too slow, you stand and wait and watch the doors. For the stairs. I went up the stairs. My unit wasn't far up, and I knew every step of that stairwell in the dark. I took it fast, key already coming out of my bag, that single thought, door, my door, the deadbolt, filling my whole head. And I listened, the way you do with your back to a thing, for him on the stairs behind me. And I couldn't tell. My own blood was too loud, my own feet, the fire door swinging shut below. I didn't know if he was 3 steps back or still in the lobby. I just ran like he was 3 steps back. I got to my door. Key in, clean. It turned. The door opened. I threw myself inside and spun and shut it and threw the deadbolt and the chain and stood there with both hands flat against it, not breathing, listening. And on the other side of the door, nothing. No footsteps in the hall, no handle, no knock. Just the building's late-night hum and me locked in, not knowing where in the building he was. I want to tell you I felt safe then. I had 3 feet of solid door and a deadbolt and a chain between us. That's supposed to be the end of the story. But I have never in my life felt less safe than I did standing behind that locked door. And it took me a minute to understand why. It was because he wasn't gone. I hadn't escaped him out onto the street and watched him give up. I had run up into the building, and he was down there in it with me, on the inside of the one door that was supposed to keep the whole world out. I called for help, and I went to the peephole, and I made myself look. The hall outside my door was empty, which should have helped and didn't, because empty just meant I couldn't see him, not that he wasn't there. He could be on the stairs, on the landing, 1 floor down, 1 floor up, in the lobby, anywhere in the whole warm, secured inside of the place I lived. And the only square of it I could see was the few feet of carpet outside a door I was never, ever going to open. And he did not leave. On the street, when someone follows you, there's a version where they peel off. You get somewhere lit, somewhere public, and they melt away, and it's over. This was not that. I sat on the floor with my back against the door, lights off, phone in my hand, watching the strip of light under it for the shadow of feet, listening to a building I'd lived in for years and never really heard before. Every settle, every pipe, every distant click became him, on the stairs, in the hall, at the lobby. 3 in the morning became 4, 4 became 5, and every minute the nothing held was a minute he was still in there with me, in no hurry. And that's the image that the whole night collapses down to. Not the chase, not the stairs. Him, stepping through the secure door in the half second my own code held it open. Because that's the moment it all turned. I did everything that door was for. I knew my code, I got inside fast, I let it shut behind me, and he walked through it on my own credentials, in the gap the lock leaves, every single time it opens. I stayed on that floor until the light started coming up gray under my door. I had stopped jumping at every sound only because I was too exhausted to keep jumping. And somewhere in there, I let myself start to believe the building was empty again. That whatever he'd been waiting for, he'd given up on, and slipped back out the way he came, and that I'd spent the last of the night being afraid of pipes. I let myself believe that. I needed to. It was almost morning. People would be up soon. And then, a little before 6, the text started coming through in the building's resident chat. My neighbors. People getting up for early shifts, coming down through the lobby on their way out. And one of them, then another, saying the same uneasy thing. There's a man in the lobby. A man none of us know, just sitting there, hood up, quiet. Been there a while, looks like. Does anyone recognize him? Did someone let him in? He was still there. At 5:45 in the morning, after I'd run up the stairs from him at 3, he was still inside my building. Not gone, not given up. He had been in that lobby or moving through that building the entire time. The whole 2.5 hours I'd sat behind my door telling myself he'd left. Just sitting on the inside of the secured door he'd followed me through. In the warm and the quiet, waiting out the night like a man who had every right to be there. He was gone before anyone could do more than look at him. By the time the right people came, the lobby was empty, and there was a hood and a quiet and a frame and nothing else. No name, no reason, nothing anybody could chase. He hadn't touched a single resident. He hadn't forced a single door. The lock that was keeping him out was the same lock that had let him in. So wherever you're coming home to tonight, get inside alone, and let's never meet. 3 drives home. A couple who knocked at 11:30 and were telling the truth. Your phone was on my car. A man who folded under a steel door in the last 6 inches before it locked. And one who walked in 2 feet behind me on my own code and then stayed inside until dawn. None of them broke in. Every one of them came home with me. So before you close the tab, ask yourself the quiet question. Of those 3, the tracker on the roof, the man under the garage door, the one who waited out the night in the lobby, which would you least want on the inside of your last locked door? Tell me in the comments. Subscribe so the next one reaches you before the car does. And the next time you pull in and the gate comes down and you let your shoulders drop, watch the door all the way shut.